Everyone, welcome back to an episode of Crypt of the Unknown. I am doing a drawing today of the Maxx, and I have a special guest with me. Tony Hernandez, would you like to say hi?
Hello.
That's Tony. So before we even get into any dialogue and conversation and everything, I'm basically going to explain what the Maxx is. By the way, this is Todd McFarlane did a cover of Spider-Man, Spider-Man #1, and he started it over. And what I'm doing is I'm going to try and turn that into the Maxx, as opposed to having Spider-Man. So this is just a what if cover, actually. What if Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man cover was actually the Maxx? And the Maxx itself is basically a character drama comic with a little hint of action here or there. The actual character of the Maxx first appeared in comic books in 1983. I think it was called Max the Hare or Max the Bunny or something. Either way, it was Jim Lee who caught the art style of Sam Keith in Marvel Presents Wolverine comics, and he offered Sam Keith to come over to Image Comics, do his own creator-owned project, and Sam Keith agreed, of course. And there's been multiple interpretations of what the Maxx is actually about, but to me, it's mostly about broken characters who do crazy things to kind of ignore coming out about their past and their history, and it's like this inner dissonance that keeps them hidden away from the sadness of their lives. But the first half of the story is really about a girl named Julie Winters, who is a freelance social worker, and she has this place in her mind titled the Outback. It's a place where her and the Maxx, quote unquote, meet from time to time. The Maxx himself is actually a couple characters that exist both in the real world and in the Outback. Sometimes he's a homeless man, sometimes he's the Maxx, a protector who takes care of the Jungle Queen, in other words, Julie Winters' mind. And how these two tie together even more is Julie Winters was sexually assaulted on the side of a road. And then later on in her story, one night she's driving and she sees someone waving her down in the middle of the night who is out on the road. And instead of braking, she is triggered by what happened to her previously, and she hits this person. So she gets out and sees that it's a man, and she hides him under some trash and a lampshade. The lampshade looks exactly like the Max's teeth and his face. And so it goes that it makes them connected on some level, and the man / the Maxx returns. And that sounds very convoluted, and it is a crazy story, but I gotta say that the imagination, artwork, everything are really what made me love it. I've never read a story like it at all, like never. So while I explained a little bit to you, I really implore everyone to get their hands on a copy of it. And yeah, that's the Maxx. And you're unfamiliar with the Maxx as well, Tony, right?
Yeah, I have not. I didn't even really know what the Maxx was about until you summarized it there.
Yeah, it's like the craziest story, and there's so much I didn't say, so there's still so much to explore if one were to read it. But it kind of I don't know, I even see comments on Amazon when I was like buying volume 1 and 2, and people were like, Sam Keith's a genius, and I'm like, really? You love it that much? All right.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I said, I didn't really know anything about it, but it was always one of those comics that you sort of heard a lot about as far as a lot of those early Image books. Especially compared to, stuff like Youngblood and stuff, which were, known a lot for their art, but not so much, people weren't exactly as enthusiastic about the stories or anything. But people still seem to really love the Maxx.
Yeah, and you're right 100% about the Youngblood, and like even Spawn's like part of that. I mean, all the comics that came out, I actually never read what was the one that Wildcats was what Jim Lee put out, I think?
Yes, that was Jim Lee's stuff.
Yeah, and I never read that either, but I'm assuming it had the same problems. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I ever actually dove into. I guess I read like 1 or 2 issues of Spawn. I think that's as far as I dove in as far as the like very early Image days.
Okay. Yeah, Spawn, I've read the first 150 issues, and then I just simply couldn't find any more volumes.
Just dip your toes into it, I guess.
Yeah, just a little bit. And so I couldn't find any more of the volumes. I guess they were out of print, and then, they were like a lot online, but so I know like half of where it's at right now, and then I got issue like 300 on inauguration day with Todd McFarlane signing it and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking like they hit like 300 recently.
Yeah, it was like I think it was like 12, 13 months ago or something, but it was he's a very intense person. When I met him, he was just super intense, and I asked him information on like, hey, someday I'm gonna send my comic to Image, blah blah blah. Like, can you give me any advice? And yeah, he got real intense real fast, and then he just kind of like scooted me away. He's like, okay, see ya.
Yeah, that sounds like Tom McFarlane.
Yeah. So, but it was a fun experience standing out in the sun for 10 hours. But yeah, what are you currently reading right now, Tony? Like, because I have just like the scattering of things.
Well, as far as new stuff, lately I've sort of, because money's a little tighter than it usually is just because of everything that's going on, I've usually been sticking with the current X-Men stuff. Basically just that and like one or two other things. Like I'm still keeping up with Batman, Strange Adventures, and at least the main Dark Knight's Death Metal. Like I'm not going into all the tie-ins, which I did when the first Metal happened, but with this one I'm just sticking to the main miniseries.
Yeah, same here. I actually I got all the tie-ins, and like the next day my comic shop was selling them for like 3 times the value. I'm like, really? It spiked that fast?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But
yeah, there's just so many of them is the thing.
Yeah, and it's just like I don't want to say like any of the tie-ins were bad. Like I didn't feel like I wasted my money, but it was like, was it really necessary type of thing?
I want to say I might have grabbed one of the tie-ins. I think it might have been the like Multiversal's End or something. The one where they met like Superboy Prime.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't remember which one that was, but I thought that was interesting. But I did not enough for me to buy all the tie-ins like I did with Metal.
Yeah, definitely. And Superboy Prime, I think his biggest story beat to date still is when he just shattered the universe and kind of changed history on a couple characters. Obviously, it didn't stand the test of time, but like part of it they tried to weave into that. The biggest thing for me was bringing Jason Todd back, obviously.
Yeah, back in Infinite Crisis, which still holds up, absolutely holds up.
Yeah, I still have it too. I think I have a couple variants as well.
I haven't read all of it yet, but I have the big thick omnibus with like all the tie-ins of that thing.
Oh wow!
Because the original event was like one of the first big events that I read when I got seriously into comics. Just the regular 7-issue series. And it's just recently that I've got that big book now that I got to work through because I really, really still like that event.
Yeah, how much was the book actually?
I didn't get it for cover price. I want to say I might have gotten for like $70 or something. I think cover is like 150 or something.
Man, that's a lot of pocket change.
It is a huge book. So.
Yeah, because was that before, and then New 52 came out after that, right?
Infinite Crisis was like 05, I want to say. And New 52 was 2011.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, it's been a like because I've the only time I've never not read comics was like a 6-year period from when I was like 12 to 18, I want to say. And in that period, I kind of had to catch up, and it's still just like it's just like going to like a Barnes & Noble or the library and just reading everything all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like a big blur to me what came out when sometimes. But
yeah. Comics for me in that like the only time I would ever read them was whenever I was able to get to the library, or like I had maybe like a friend who had those old Marvel Essentials volumes.
Oh yeah, the black and white.
Especially through middle school, that was basically all of my comics consumption, because I didn't really have a comic shop near me, and just didn't really know how to find one until like 2014, 2015, which is when I like really started diving in.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, I kind of grew up with them. My dad actually gave me a bunch of his like 70s comics with like FF and a lot of Marvel like team ups, and I'm trying to remember, there was some Hulk and stuff, but it was mostly Marvel. He actually didn't have, I don't think he had a single DC comic, so my dad was like a Marvel guy.
Yeah, from that era where you had to pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the battle of the best. The battle of the nerds, really.
Yeah, I think they called them Marvel Zombies back then.
Oh yeah. The good old days. But yeah, I don't know, like what was your first comic book?
Well, the first one that I remember owning was I don't know what age I got it. It was a collection in like a magazine format, which that my parents had found at Target of Amazing Fantasy 15 and the first 3 issues of Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh my god.
And because I was, as you know, as a kid, I was obsessed with the first 2 Sam Raimi movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was basically my first like superhero love with Spider-Man. And so obviously, the reprints of the original comics were easy, and it was just the first couple issues. So, and it was in color, so it was easy to give to a kid. And I read those first couple issues over and over again.
Oh wow. Yeah, those Raimi movies blew me away back in the day. Are you a defender of the third one?
I think there's aspects that work really well. I think that the rest of the movie doesn't. I think all the stuff with the Sandman is really, really good, and the rest of the movie kind of lets that potential down.
Agreed. Yeah. It really should have been his movie, and then they could have introduced Eddie Brock and then set up Venom for the next one. That's what I would have taken from it if I had been in charge,
Yeah.
But because the whole symbiote thing, even now, like today, when I think about them doing movies about it, it's like you got to have like that's its own like 1, 2, maybe 3 movies. You're setting up Carnage and everything,
Oh yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that people forget that whole arc was huge in the comics. I mean, they've got the trades. There's like 3 thick volumes of the symbiote saga or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all even before you get to Venom.
Yeah, and Venom, obviously a happy accident from, you guessed it, whose artwork I'm kind of trying to channel here today is Todd McFarlane.
Yeah. Was it Sam Keith? Not Sam Keith.
No, it wasn't Sam Keith.
I don't even know if has he done like, oh wait, you mentioned he did Wolverine.
Yeah, so he did these, like the Marvel Comics Presents, where I think it was like, I used to have a couple of them, but it was like 4 pages of a story or like 8 pages, and then it would switch over to like some other story about like some other character.
Right. I think you sent me a handful of them.
Oh yeah, that's right, I did. Yeah, so you might have one of those, Sam Keith. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that Sam Keith had done Marvel work before the Maxx, but I guess that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then he also worked on Sandman, I believe. But yeah, I guess him and Neil Gaiman had sort of falling out or something. But my first introduction to Sam Keith's work, I think he did Nightfall issue 3 of Batman, and that where
really?
Robin's it's the one where Robin's tied up and Tim Drake and then Croc and Bane are around him.
Yes, I do remember that. I just recently been going through Nightfall, actually. I've been going through the big omnibuses.
Oh man, yeah, it's still a killer story. Maybe not the most effective ending, but still a killer story.
Yeah, the middle's a little dragged out, but it picks up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just it's always good to see, like, and I think this is why people like Scott Snyder when he was writing Batman. It's good to actually see him like get beaten and broken in some way. I mean, those are the stories that stick out when the hero really has to triumph, over being so just mentally drained or whatever it is. And I think in Nightfall, that's definitely why it stood the test of time, not just because of, bringing in John Claude Jones, Van Damme, whatever his like 5 names are.
Wait,
Jean
who are we
Paul
talking
Valley.
about? Oh, John Paul Valley. Okay.
Yeah. And, it stood the test of time, I think, just because of like the setup and Batman actually being taken out of commission for a while. But that's just how I feel.
I mean, I think the thing that people forget with that, and also, I mean, people are a little less positive on Death of Superman, but the thing that both those stories have in common is that they had like basically a writer's room hashing out those stories, whereas something like the Spider-Man Clone Saga that tried to ape those kind of stories really didn't have anything that organized going on.
Yeah, the Clone Saga and Maximum Carnage.
Yeah. Whereas like in Nightfall, you had it was Alan Grant, Denny O'Neil, Chuck Dixon, and someone else. There's a fourth one, but it's these 4 writers who hashed that out, and I think a good deal of the rest of the major Batman stories of the 90s.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So that they all sort of felt like one big story.
Yeah, I actually like all their writing too. Chuck Dixon, especially his I think he wrote Robin for a while, and that's one of the most overlooked runs. Yeah, I love that.
He's had a lot of big runs over at DC. I know he had a really long run on Green Arrow for a while.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, but you're right about that. And if people don't remember too, Death of Superman, that was there was 10 people or something in that writer's room and coming up with Doomsday and all that backstory. I mean, yeah, it took some time, and that they had to replace, I think, one guy. I forget who was writing the book at the time, but he was doing 4 Superman books, and then he quit, and then it took 10 other people to replace the one guy.
I think that was Byrne. I think.
Yeah, you're right. It was Byrne. That's right.
Yeah, because then it was Jurgens, Louis Simonson, and I don't remember who the other 2 people were.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been a minute. I have it on my shelf over there, but it's far away.
It's funny because then Jurgens would then go on to do the Clone Saga, at least for a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's right. And who else? Yeah. Oh, and then Joe DiMatteis was also, I think, on that, and then he was on Maximum Carnage, which they later referred to as Maximum Garbage because
I still haven't read it.
Oh man, we covered it on the show here not too long ago, and I just think it's such a big misstep because it's just all over the place. There's 500 fights and 10 issues. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it seems like one of those stories, but also it seems like a story that's probably still kind of fun to read. Just it definitely feels like a time capsule of that era.
Oh, definitely. And especially all the video games that followed it and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's cool that was your first comic book. So you became kind of a Marvel fan at the beginning, or you were just
Yeah, I mean I guess I sort of had a little bit of both, because the big things, I think the first one was definitely Spider-Man, was definitely those Raimi movies, but then growing up, I watched a lot of Batman the Animated Series and Justice League. And Teen Titans, actually. A lot of Teen Titans. Probably more than anything else.
Yeah, that Teen Titans show was popular as hell. And it's certainly, still today, people still talk about it. It's to the test of time. Obviously, Batman the Animated Series has X-Men at the same time, and then Superman, Justice League, yep. All of them.
And the Spider-Man show that was on, that animated series that was on at the same time.
That's right, yeah. Although when I go back to that show and I watch it, it kind of feels like it's sped up or something, because it's just like things happen so fast in that show.
Oh yeah, no, it's a bizarre show, and it's been a long time since I've gone back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bizarre thing to go back to, especially compared to what they were able to get away with in Batman.
Oh, I know. I think in Batman they actually had like gunfire, and whereas in like Spider-Man and X-Men they always had like basically like phasers set to stun.
Yeah,
It was just it's just always lasers.
Morbius couldn't be a vampire because it couldn't have blood.
That's right. He said plasma.
Yes, he absorbed your plasma.
No plasma.
Whereas I think there were 1 or 2 shots of actual blood in Batman.
You're right. And then in I think the most blood was in Mask of the Phantasm.
Right. Yeah, and they could get away with that because it was a movie. Right.
Which, if it came out today, something like that, man, it'd make so much money. But
I don't know. I think it's hard to guess at stuff like that because you've got something like Lego Batman, which was much more sort of mainstream as far as being much more family friendly, and that made money, but it wasn't like Dark Knight money or anything like that.
Right. That one, I was kind of weary about that one though. I don't know why, but I think that for whatever reason the animation and just the humor and the trailers didn't do it for me, so I actually didn't watch it. I kind of feel like that was part of its problem.
You need to see it. It's great.
Yeah, well, I think I saw like the first 20 minutes, like just a friend had it on or something, and I couldn't. I don't know. I was like, it has to do something more because it just wasn't capturing me right off the bat.
Yeah.
But to each his own.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is for anyone who's curious about the drawing as well. This was the roughest drawing I've ever done so far on the show. And the reason why it was so rough is because I'm literally creating something here. I'm not looking at. There's nothing to look at. There's nothing to take from. I could take for the shape of Spider-Man.
Yeah, other than that iconic cover.
Yeah, that iconic cover, but like the background and the actual face of this Maxx, which isn't the body shape in the comic book. It's actually just a cartoonish shape, which I think I show at some point later on, but doing this face and the way it looks and then adding the colors later, that's never been drawn by anyone except for me. And so this is going to be the roughest drawing I've ever done on the show.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that always really strikes me about the Maxx in general is just like and I haven't seen whether or not any other characters look like that, but like the highly stylized look of that character.
Yeah, because it's like simplistic in shape, but like all the detail on it and everything makes it like stick out.
Yeah, it makes it almost look like a warped nightmare.
It really is. And this character in the corner is called Mr. Gone. He's kind of like the antagonist of the whole comic book, and it's too hard to explain what he is because he plays just like 10 different roles by different people. And like, again, the Outback is like this place that it's like a different reality, but it's also people's minds. And he's like found a way to kind of tap into it, but also he's a person on the outside just as well. So it's hard to explain. Again, like even you, Tony, like you should read it, but after you read it again, you're just going to be like, well, what was it about? And you're going to have to decide because there's no definite answer, you know?
Mm. I mean, it explains why he was doing work with Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Definitely no stranger to that kind of like outside of the box
thinking, yeah, and writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sandman's a good comic book in its own right. I think I stopped reading around volume 6, though, just because it started. He tried something different and tried to introduce like random character stories. I think it had to do with death or something, but I couldn't get into that volume and I haven't gone back since. But up to volume 6, amazing comic.
Yeah. I also haven't finished it, but I'm still trying to get through it. I have a lot of different books on my to read pile. So at some point, I have the second absolute volume on my shelf.
Oh my gosh. Is that also a pricey one?
Yes, those less so. I think those are like, depending on how big they are, between like $75 to $100.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe more. I think they just came out with an absolute New Gods that I think might be 125 or something.
Yeah, the Jack Kirby new one. Yeah, I think it was 125 or 150, something like that. You're right.
Which should be a thick book, because they had that Fourth World Omnibus, which is huge.
Mm-hmm. I actually own Volume 1, and I think I found it for like $20 or $12 or something, and it's worth like $70 or something. The old prints, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that, and oh my God, Jack Kirby is just like insane with Fourth World.
I guess I haven't. His work is something I need to dive more into. I think the only stuff I've really read of Jack Kirby's was, I guess, the early Avengers and early X-Men stuff.
Okay.
Because the Avengers stuff was like one of the many Essentials volumes that was passed around in my middle school.
Oh wow.
And the early X-Men volumes were just ones that I ended up reading because I'm sort of in the middle of a big X-Men read-through.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I should have suspected that, because now people should know. Me and Tony both huge X-Men fans, especially for like Claremont and now Hickman.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Hickman's run.
Huge. I mean, I'm a huge X-Men fan in general. Like, for me, it goes beyond that. But
yeah, I agree. Yeah, you know what actually is the hardest part now? Like, at first it was trying to collect all of Uncanny, and now it's trying to remember what's left that I need to collect.
Yeah. Well, because they've been doing a really good job of putting everything X-Men into oversized hardcovers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those or omnibuses, same trim size, so they slide next to each other on the shelf and stuff. They're almost done with all of Claremont. They're very, very close.
Yeah, and he only stopped writing in the 90s, so I'm glad they're finally catching up.
Yeah. They finished filling in like all of the weird holes in the 90s. Like, they've pretty much got everything from X-Men 1 up to, I guess, the end of New X-Men.
Okay.
As far as like the mainline stuff. The only gap that I think they have left is the space between I think the most recent omnibus that's gonna come out in like a month or two, Uncanny X-Men Volume 4, I think ends at like 193.
Oh, okay. So
I think
it's still got a ways to go then.
Well, no, because they jump all back and forth all the time. The only gap they have left is from 193 to the beginning of Mutant Massacre. That's in Claremont's run. That's the only thing they have left to collect in oversized hardcover, anyways. Because that stuff has gotten like trade paperbacks and stuff, but they're so close.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then once they finish that, they can start doing a lot of the big runs in the 2000s that no one remembers.
Yeah. I actually, when I got Marvel Unlimited, I tried to force myself to start going past Claremont into the 90s, which for people, it's either you love it or hate it, But it's a rough period. That's not to say that anything good didn't come out of it. There's always something good, but by the way, showing this off right here, this is the Fudo Nansuki brush pen. That's what I'm going to be using to ink this. But yeah, I tried to force myself to read it, and I think the Will Portacio stuff after Jim Lee, and I forget who was working with him, but it was just so god awful.
I think that was Fabian Nicieza, I think.
He maybe?
I think he's the one that took over after Claremont left.
Yeah, and I just
because he was doing so much work in the X-Men office at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he was also working. He was also working on New Mutants and X-Force with Liefeld.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Which I do have all the Liefeld New Mutant stuff, including Cable's first appearance, but it's just not.
it's for completionist sake, not for quality's sake.
Right.
That's why it's on my shelf.
I mean, it's the truth. You gotta, But I'm not. If somebody thinks I'm gonna go out and pay $300 for a Deadpool first appearance, I'm not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, they were coming out with those, and I guess they still are, those facsimile editions of a lot of important first appearances.
Mm-hmm.
And I grabbed the facsimile of Deadpool's first appearance.
Oh yeah.
Just because it's $4, reprints all everything, including all the original ads. Beats having to pay $300 for actual New Mutants 98.
Yeah, and you can add it to the collection, and it'll fit in. I think I did that with Gambit's first appearance, which either way, I'm gonna buy the original at some point.
Yeah, I grabbed that too. The facsimile.
The facsimile, and then
I think that's how you pronounce it.
I think it is. And then I got, I think it was Venom's first appearance or something. They put out something with Venom, and I got that too.
Yeah, I think that was Amazing number 300.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had that in because they've done a ton of different sort of reprint programs. They used to do these the True Believers reprints.
Oh,
that had
yeah.
the big banner on the top.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had that of Amazing 300.
Okay. Yeah, I remember those too. And they, just anything to get an extra buck out of you, which is fine, because sometimes people need those,
And, they're cheap, just $1, or at least that's what those used to be. I think the facsimiles are like $4 now.
Yeah. Yeah, they're starting to pump up those numbers.
Yeah.
Because I was working at a comic shop for a while, and what they were saying, people will come in, they're like, I can't believe Marvel's charging like $5 now for this, and they're talking about X-Men, Hickman's X-Men, and I'm like, well, first off, it's good. Second,
well, yeah.
I mean, the second, the art's real good, and then third, it's like, well, inflation. I mean, maybe offsetting to $3 actually still you can make good money off of that. I am not sure though.
Yeah, I mean, out of everything, that's gonna be $5 well spent. I think that whole Hickman run has been pretty flawless so far.
Yeah, and it like reading the things that he flips on their head, I was just like, no way. I was like, there's no way. Like, this is too good an idea.
Yeah.
And
and it's one of those stories that, like, especially most modern writers tend to write for trade nowadays. And House of X and Powers of 10 were like probably the best experience week to week I've had with a book, especially like being on Twitter with people. The whole X Twitter community that kind of sprung up around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really, really interesting just because, those books were weekly, literally. So just being able to, it's almost like in the old days where you had like the ultimate kind of old school comic book cliffhangers, and then you would go on Twitter and freak out with everyone about what this might mean, and like everyone's analyzing, like every panel on every page, speculating about what it might mean, and it was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, I agree. And isn't he kind of known too for like leaving little hints of things in his writing?
Oh yeah, Yeah, he's one of those guys, and he's said, I think, that like he's got like a 5-year plan for the X-Men. He's one of those guys who like he has stuff planted for like 50 issues down the line to pay off. He thinks big like that.
Yeah, and that's what you got to do nowadays, actually, to like keep people invested. And I get the like writing for trades because obviously they're gonna make more money. Like it's a better investment sometimes for buyers who don't want to own and wait for the like issues to come out every month or every week. I kind of get that, but at the same time, I'm glad he's doing it the way he's doing it.
Yeah, and I think that would be a much it would be a thing that more people will be willing to do, like writing for issue to issue, if they if Diamond didn't have such a stranglehold on physical comic distribution, because that's the only reason that digital comics are still $4. Yeah, because Diamond doesn't want them to put the digital comics cheaper than the physicals, because then people won't buy the physicals.
Right, and then they would have almost no reason to exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is I swear to God, every week somebody will, because DC left Diamond, and
yes,
there's always a new video on YouTube every week, like DC closing its doors like soon, like they're done, they're finished, they should have never left Diamond, and it's like
the guy is owned by one of the biggest corporations on the planet is going to shut down.
Yeah, I'm like, no, it's not how it works. I'm sorry, but
yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to see people like lose their minds and then just have these wild speculative theories about it.
Yeah, every several months we get one of those. I've seen multiple of those about Marvel within the last couple of years, and it's always just nothing.
Yeah, never is. But I'm glad too that I know I can like depend on Marvel and DC. I know they're gonna stick around because there's still money to be made.
Yeah. Even if I think in a lot of ways they sort of stick around just because a lot of the studios know that they can be used as kind of testing grounds for future movie ideas and things like that.
Yeah, but, marketing tools almost.
Yeah, but I mean when you're given that kind of I guess protection to just keep doing what you're doing, it's never a bad thing.
Yeah, that's true. Especially it keeps people in work too. People who I know I admire a lot of writers at Marvel, DC, but of course most of all Image. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam Keith being one of them again. This whole drawing right here. If people don't stick around for it, at least do me a favor and just remember that Sam Keith now, because he owns the Maxx, and recently he actually came out with a crossover with Batman. So if you don't want to read the Maxx by itself, because that's not enough to get you invested, you can always read the crossover with Batman.
Oh, I didn't actually hear about that.
Yeah, and I think it's slowly been coming out, so it's like once every 3 months or something.
Oh, it's one of those books.
Yeah, it's not like on official schedule. It's just whenever it gets done. And
see, that's when you wait for trade.
Yeah, definitely. And because you don't know, you might miss an issue. But Sam Keith himself, every interview I've seen him in, they'll be like, I love your artwork. Like, how did you, whatever? And he's like, who cares? It's not that great. Like, it's like, I don't know. I don't care. Why do you care?
What are you doing here?
Yeah, why are we in this video?
Who let you in my house?
This is not my house. This is not my beautiful wife. But yeah, I would highly suggest checking out the Maxx otherwise. But yeah, so when you say you were reading Batman recently, how did you feel about the Arkham Knight finally hitting the comic books as a character? Did you like that? Because that was the last arc I read.
That's kind of funny because I have been keeping up with Batman. I have not been keeping up with Detective Comics.
Oh.
And that's where the Arkham Knight was in.
Yeah, that's right.
So because I did buy Detective 1000, where he pops up at the very end, I didn't keep up with that arc that led to. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll just go ahead and go on record and say I didn't like it.
A lot of people don't like that game. I really like that game.
Yeah, I like the game a lot. I got the platinum trophy for it, but I didn't like the twist they made on the character in the comic books. And I felt like the story was just a generic. I mean, it could have been from any timeline. Any writer could have just day jobber could have just thrown it in there. It was, to me, it felt like the most generic way to bring in that character to the comic world.
Mm.
But that was who was writing it for that time?
I think that was Tomasi.
Yeah, you're right. It was Tomasi.
Which is interesting because he'd just gotten off of his Superman run, which I absolutely love his Superman.
Are you saying it's better than the Bendis run?
It's better than like the 5 issues I read of Bendis's run, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think anyone liked Bendis's run. I read the first issue and I was out.
I don't know if Bendis liked his run.
Yeah.
That's what I get from a lot of his writing nowadays.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think he was there for the paycheck, not the writing. But
yeah,
he was. I think he's always been kind of more of a Marvel guy, identifying with that group of characters than DC.
I don't know. It's interesting because I think that you can really see when he cares about a character and when he doesn't. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because, a lot of people will say that a lot of his sort of late era Marvel work was not great.
I would agree.
I read the first several issues of the most recent Jessica Jones series and just couldn't keep going. I actually haven't read Alias, so that's probably bad for me to bring up. But
I mean, sometimes that happens, yeah.
But in contrast, his infamous Iron Man was fantastic. Which I think he did within the year of that Jessica Jones.
I think you're right, yeah.
Minus the last issue, which I think is a tremendous letdown for that series, but overall it was fantastic.
Was that issue 600?
No, the infamous Iron Man number 12, because that one didn't connect to the main Iron Man stuff that he was doing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the main Iron Man issue. I think the last one in the main issues he was doing was 600, and I bought it. Yeah, and it was just awful, and I couldn't stand it. But
yeah, I started reading that Iron Man when that All New All Different Marvel started, and I kept up with it. I think up until Civil War 2.
Okay.
Yeah, Civil War 2 was the end of me following a lot of books, as it turned out.
Was that the breaking point?
For a handful of series, yeah. Just because I didn't want to follow it into that event, I just sort of stuck to the books that weren't involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
Which there were quite a few still.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, a lot of people hated Carol Danvers' arc in that and everything else that took place. I never got to read it, so I don't know.
I haven't either, but I know what happens in it, and yeah, it doesn't sound great.
Yeah. I still own the original issues to the first Civil War, though.
I don't, but that's a weird series to go back to.
Mm-hmm. Different. It feels like a different time, kind of.
Yeah, and I can't say that it's aged super gracefully.
I agree.
Steve McNiven's art still looks pretty good, though.
Agreed. Yeah. Had some good twists in it, too, but yeah, overall, the whole thing, there was the cool moment, with Punisher saving Spider-Man, and Spider-Man, spoilers for everyone, Spider-Man revealing that he's Peter Parker to the world because Tony just can't seem to let that go, and makes him do it basically and come out of the shadows.
Why are you calling me out like that?
Yeah. Tony Stark, I mean, but no.
Yeah, that's the awkwardness of whenever I try to talk about Iron Man and anything.
Yeah, Tony this, Tony that. It's yes, I did do that. Because, I mean, you are, at the end of the day, a billionaire philanthropist playboy, right, Tony?
Yeah. I'm just not Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it had some good twists. And I always like a surprise appearance from the Punisher. When people had that theory that, I forget which Marvel movie it was, but there's like a semi truck that runs into the bad guys. Somebody's like, it was the Punisher. And I was like, please let that be a true thing. Even though I know it's not.
I don't know this. Was this about Captain America Civil War? Or?
You know what? It might have been Captain America Civil War, yeah.
I'd never heard about this.
Yeah, and I forget where it was. It was just some high-speed chase and some semi like... It's like it purposely ran into the bad guys' cars, but then it's never explained, and people speculated it was Frank Castle. But yeah, this at the end of this video, people will see as well that I do a light box later after I color this in, because I never color anything on the show. And this one, I was just having so much fun thinking about the Maxx and, drawing for it, imagining the character in a different shape and everything, that I ended up doing another light box of just the black and white to kind of keep that as its own thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. Where did you learn to draw?
So I want to say when I was 18, I really kind of started just doodling in my room, and then I kind of built up a portfolio, but mostly what I would do is I would look at like Marvel covers or something and just try to recreate them. So like one of the covers was Frank Miller's Wolverine, and yeah, and stuff like that.
The Old Man Logan one, or?
Not the Old Man one, but the Logan one where he's got his claws out and he's like telling someone to come here.
Oh, sorry, Frank Miller, not Mark Millar.
Yeah, sorry, Frank Miller and Claremont.
No, that was just me having a brain fart.
It's all good.
Yeah, I mean that's a book that I just recently acquired, like just late last year.
Yeah, I've been slowly rebuying it since I had to sell it at one point. It's a good book to have in your collection.
Yeah, I mean, and I was able last October at New York Comic Con to get Claremont to sign it.
Oh yeah, that's right, you did go, huh?
Yeah, it was my first New York Comic Con, and hopefully not my last.
Oh man, hopefully, yeah, if this pandemic ever goes away, before we all die.
Well, that, and also because I'm not living in New York anymore.
Oh, okay. Is that like as strenuous, like, to get tickets for? Like, are they really as scarce as people say it is?
I guess it sort of depends on what days you're getting, because I didn't have any trouble getting mine, but I also went on a Thursday. I think when I bought mine, the Saturday and Friday were already sold out, but I think Sunday was still open.
Okay, so they could catch closing day or opening day mostly.
Yeah, I mean, the system they used to buy tickets is a little weird. So I don't know, maybe you'd get luckier than I would, but I didn't really have much trouble.
Okay. Yeah, I've only been to the Comic Cons here in Arizona and like some like anime cons or something, but I have never been to the actual New York Comic Con. I'm guessing it was huge.
Oh yeah, it was big. I think the con that I've gone to the most is Silicon Valley Comic Con out here in California.
Oh snap! What's that like?
Well, it's interesting because it's very clearly It's one of those cons where like the comic part definitely feels a little secondary.
Oh.
Because when you go, like, there's not really a ton of like comic guests. Like, there's some, but it's more for sort of general entertainment. I guess sort of what I guess San Diego Comic Con still gets comic guests, but SDCC is definitely a lot more geared towards general entertainment now. And that's definitely how Silicon Valley was. I mean, they definitely have, comic shops with stands, but didn't really have many like writer guests or artist guests, which is a little disappointing.
Yeah, super disappointing.
Yeah, I don't remember what I think 2017 might have been the last year I went to, but then the year after that, 2018, they had San Francisco Comic Con, which was a much smaller show, but also got much better guests, because it is like a comic convention first and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Would make it worth the time, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, I got to shake hands with Jim Starlin over there.
Oh my gosh.
And get a signature from Kevin Conroy. Like,
wow. Yeah, Starlin. Oh man, Thanos.
Yeah. And I got to be at a panel where he was talking about his career, and it was a really interesting panel.
Yeah, it's cool to hear those old stories from those guys and talking about the Marvel bullpen and just kind of the things that went on behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, they had Jerry Conway over there speaking of the Marvel bullpen.
Oh man.
Not as many people at his table as you might think, though. Like I said, smaller convention.
Yeah. Man, I have a terrible Chris Claremont story, but I basically ran away from him because I realized I'm like, oh my god, it's Chris Claremont, and I got like a panic attack, got nervous, but I was like, okay, bye. Like the Flash, I was gone.
Oh god, he was very nice at New York Comic Con.
Yeah, he's super cool. And he signed one of my Uncanny issues. It's the one with Rogue and Wolverine running on it. It's like a black cover.
Oh god.
It's like 180 something.
Quiz me. I think no, it's like 172. I think.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm gonna look it up because I think I'm right about that.
And he didn't have a lot of people there either as well. He had like maybe 10, 15 people on his line, and I'm like, really? That's it? For Chris Claremont?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the line I was in was much longer just because it was New York Comic Con. Although it definitely was not the longest line.
That's true.
It's like we were right next to the line to see Jen Bartel.
Mm-hmm.
And her line was huge. It like stretched like across half of the hall.
Oh my god.
And like I guess in fairness, I think I got to the Claremont line a little early, like sort of just after it had opened. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I was still right next to the Jen Bartel line, which was like stretching across the hall at that early stage. By the way, it's 173. I was one off.
Oh man. Yeah.
I was one off. That was that Paul Smith cover.
Yeah, that's right. Great cover. I love it.
I love that cover. That honestly, I think that as far as like an individual issue, that might be my favorite Uncanny issue.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just, I mean, I guess maybe pair that with the previous one, just because that's the whole story. Mm-hmm. But just that really awesome story of them in Japan, and it was the first time that Rogue was on the X-Men, and it had Storm on her own with Yukio in the city and stuff, and it was just a really cool story.
Yeah, it's always cool to see them, like, especially like who was it? Psylocke too, like her whole story arc in Japan, and kind of like that team together. I really like seeing the desert team.
Yeah, I mean, this was before Psylocke though. This was
Yeah. But I think they go back, and it's almost kind of like the same team. It's like Wolverine, I think, except for they include Jubilee, and then Storm's there. And,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool too because like it, and part of it is just I really love Paul Smith as an artist. I think he's one of the most underrated Uncanny X-Men artists out there. But also like I mentioned it was the first sort of rogue story with her on the X-Men, and it was so cool because at that time like no one on the team trusted her. And it was her teamed up with Wolverine, sort of fighting the Silver Samurai.
Yeah.
And it was great because it's a really sort of clever storytelling because they, at the end of that issue, sort of have that moment where, like, one of the henchmen was about to shoot, what was the name of Wolverine's wife again?
Yukio? Mariko,
yes. Yukio is the girl with Storm.
That's right.
Yeah, like one of the henchmen was about to shoot Mariko, and Rogue sort of flew in and like took the bullet for her just in time so that Wolverine could stop the guy. And it was one of those things where like, everyone else on the team still did not trust Rogue at all. But at the end of that issue, it's like Wolverine's like, you took a bullet for her. I trust you.
Yeah.
And that's really clever just because, like, at that point, Claremont knew that Wolverine was, like, the fan favorite. So that was, like, an easy way to get the audience on Rogue's side. Because, like, if Wolverine trusts her, everyone's going to trust her.
Right. It's one of those issues where... And this was what surprised me about that arc, especially with Rogue and just everything she goes through for, like, a long-ass time, is because I grew up on animated series, so I always thought they were all together. Like, Scott was always there, and, they were all together as, like, that team I saw in the animated series. So when Rogue was, like, not how she is portrayed in that took me for a whirl, and that kind of drew me in even more to, like, what you're talking about, her whole arc there joining the team, because I was like, well, wait, this is completely different than what I remember.
Yeah, and Cyclops isn't even on the team in this issue, I don't think.
No, he's already off. He's already taken off, and then I think X Factor's about to come around way later.
I think he shows up at like the end of the issue because because of it was supposed to be Wolverine's wedding day, and this is right before From the Ashes kicks off, so they kind of need Cyclops in there for that. But it's really interesting going back and reading a lot of that 80s stuff and seeing just how often the team shifts. And I guess it's not that uncommon for like the roster of a team to shift between issues, but Claremont was really fluid about cycling members in and out.
Oh yeah, you didn't even notice it till like later on. You're like, oh wait a second, he did it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I plan to, as soon as I complete my Claremont run, I'm gonna go back and read the whole thing over again. And for anyone who has never read it, I mean, what an amazing run! Probably the greatest, my favorite run of all time, and one of the greatest in comic book history.
Yeah, it's one of those that you can almost fool yourself into thinking it's a little overrated just because everyone says it's great. But as it turns out, it's just because it's that great.
Yeah, it really is just one of those things that lives up to its reputation.
Yeah, I think for people who are less familiar with it, I think it maybe starts off a little rough.
100%.
I think the initial issues are sort of trying to deal with the kind of remnants of the Silver Age still hanging around.
Yeah, it's very much in the vein of insert bad guy, team go.
Yeah, and that's especially by the time you get to like Dark Phoenix, that's the stuff that Claremont immediately tries to get away from.
Yeah, and I mean, what a story. So yeah, I would agree with you there if anyone was going to go into it. Honestly, the thing I always say is if you're unsure about it going into it, start when Kitty Pryde joins the team. You'll never leave the book. Kitty Pryde, my favorite character on the team. her whole arc of, kind of being the kid that you can see yourself in joining the X-Men. It's a miraculous storytelling.
Yeah, I guess if there was like a specific starting point, I guess Days of Future Past would probably be the closest to like a perfect starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do that too.
Well, yeah, because that's when that is, because Kitty Pryde joins in the middle of Dark Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people also forget that Days of Future Past was literally right after Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, it was like two whoppers right next to each other, just bam.
And that's sort of a perfect story to start off with because it's just 2 issues, which is another thing I think people forget. And also, it's sort of one of those things that kind of introduces the kind of more complex aspects of the X-Men, the stuff that can't always be solved by just fighting the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also is a story that, especially recently with the Hickman stuff, has sort of been, I've seen like articles talking about Hickman's run, reaffirming that like the definitive X-Men story isn't Dark Phoenix, it's Days of Future Past.
Oh man, that's...
Which I think is very true in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't want to disagree with him. It's just a lot to think about. But I wouldn't disagree with him right off the bat. Now that what I'm thinking about it right now. But there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack really with the whole run. I think the only moment in all of Claremont's run that I didn't like is when, and I always forget his name because it's just like a ridiculous name, but like that wizard who changes reality and he's kind of keeping everyone prisoner. And I think Storm and Morph like somehow come around and...
Oh god.
He's like wearing a black cloak.
I know who you're talking about. I cannot remember his name.
Yeah, it's just like a ridiculous name, and the whole premise of the story is ridiculous. I think it even goes into annuals, and that's the only story in the whole run where I'm just like, please, can we just can this end?
I like that story, but it goes on a little long.
Yeah, super long.
And that although I guess that is one where the New Mutants get more involved. So it is one that feels a little bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's like their first big thing with the X-Men too, isn't it? Or no, it was Mutant Massacre. No, but that comes later.
No, Mutant Massacre was after. Well, they had like one issue of crossover in like I think issue 167. I think was whichever issue that they got back, that the X-Men got back to Earth after the Brood saga.
Mm-hmm. And then
they sort of briefly cross over.
Yeah, it's like the Morlocks or something that get hit by.
Well, that's Mutant Massacre.
Yeah. But they get hit by the God, what was their cool name?
The Reavers?
The Reavers, yeah.
Yeah, that's Mutant Massacre.
Yeah. Sorry. I haven't read the run in about 3 years. It's been a minute.
It's a large story. It's fine.
Yeah. But I'm glad we kind of brought this up. And as I said, me and Tony are both fans of X-Men in general, and then, of course, X-Men comic books. And Hickman's killing it. I would suggest go read Claremont's run. If I could pick a couple stories, like Tony said, Days of Future Past is a huge thing for Kitty Pryde. Just Kitty Pryde herself. Anytime she's on the team, just pick up that issue, read it. You're good. I'm a big fan of Arcade, which is a ridiculous villain that I love.
Yes.
I mean, I love Arcade. He's my favorite Marvel villain, next to the ridiculousness of Master Mold. So.
Oh god, and that's Silver Age going back.
Yeah,
Master Mold.
That's even before Claremont. Even though I think Master Mold does come back at some point.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and then that Days of Future Past, and then when the Desert Team is out doing their thing and the world thinks the X-Men's dead, that's another part I would suggest to people that pick up those moments in the run, because those are my biggest moments.
Yeah, that's one of those sort of underdog periods that is I don't think is necessarily the popular choice, but I think has been gaining a lot of support, especially lately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people thinking, that not giving credit to Jubilee as a character, they're just like, oh, it's another Kitty Pryde to replace her.
Yeah. And I
And
mean that was a really interesting team because you had Psylocke, but you also had Dazzler and you had Longshot,
oh yeah.
like characters we usually don't see on the X-Men in pretty much anything after this.
Mm-hmm. And Havoc played a big role in that as well.
Oh yeah, and Polaris,
Polaris.
I believe, right?
Yeah. Uh,
I think she was on there.
Really quickly, I should mention the reason why I'm whiting out the eyes. I decided I didn't like the eye look, and I wanted to go with the more, whited out look that it has for the actual Maxx character. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there. People were like, "Why is he whiting it out now?" Because I wasn't happy with it.
Oh yeah, I forget that he has like just plain white eyes.
Mm-hmm. And I thought I'd make it cool and just do these like really weird opticals, but I was just like, you know what? Let's just make it more like it is. So, but I do make a couple changes here, and we're almost to the end here, but you will see me coloring it. I do show off the only issue I have that kind of shows the cover of that Spider-Man #1, but it's actually, let's see, it's right next to me. It's Spider-Man issue 13, and it's when he's wearing the black suit, and it's Subsidy Part 1 of 2, McFarlane 91. So,
Sorry, it's I was because that's also Spider-Man #1 though.
it is also Spider-Man #1. It's kind of like it's like it says the 13th all new collector's item issue, and then on Spider-Man #1 it says the first all new collector's item issue.
Yeah. Because I don't think I got to issue 15 of that run, or of 13 of that run.
Yeah, because I think doesn't he quit the comic around like 15 or something?
I don't remember when he quits. I think I might have either almost his entire run or all of his entire run on Spider-Man. I don't remember where he leaves though.
Yeah, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's the issue in Spider-Man's figuring out that Hulk has nards.
I didn't read up to there, so I'm gonna take your word for that.
Yeah, it's like it's on the cover. He's just like punching up, and he's literally punching Hulk right in the crotch. It's a funny cover. But yeah.
Torment is kind of an interesting story though. That first story.
Mm-hmm. For a novice writer, I think he did a good job.
Yeah. It definitely reads like I really like Kraven's Last Hunt. That's how it reads.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for that, I guess it's not terrible.
No. And the art, oh my god. I keep thinking like this guy's drawing like this and selling your best comic book, and the first thing you think is, I want to tell him how to draw differently. It's like, what are you doing, Tom DeFalco?
I didn't know that he was trying to do that.
Yeah, he told Todd, stop drawing the spaghetti webbing and stop making the eyes so big on him, and
That's funny.
Yeah, draw him like we drew him in the 70s. Quit trying to update him and draw him your way. And
that's funny because those are like the things people remember the most from that run.
Yeah, it's like I literally have like printouts of the original like issue covers, the Return of the Man Called Mysterio and stuff on my wall, which is funny enough, it was drawn on DC Comics ink paper. And I'm guessing because he did Batman Year 2 and just had it or something, but
did he?
Yeah, he did the covers for Batman Year 2.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. I have 2 of them, I think. I think he did 4 or 5. But
that's wild.
Yeah, but I have them up on my wall, and I look at them every day, and I think, man, like, even now today, there's no Spider-Man that will look this good to me, or no Hulk almost. Like, my favorite Hulk is McFarlane's Hulk, which we were talking about earlier at some point.
Oh yeah, that was the Peter David stuff.
Yeah, Peter David. And before we go, I do want to point out that there is an actual viral video, obviously on the internet, on YouTube, of Peter David and Todd McFarlane having a debate because they didn't like each other, which is
Shocking.
unfortunate.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's shocked, I tell you. And so you can go watch that after this, hopefully, and maybe leave a comment below what you think of it, because it's kind of hilarious and awful, and in a way that it makes Todd McFarlane kind of look like a dork, and Peter David maybe even more a dork because he's taking it seriously.
Have you ever seen that video of Todd and Rob Liefeld drawing that character with Stan Lee?
Oh, overt kill.
Yeah, overkill, but then it turned into overt kill later.
Later on, yeah. And they're just drawing all the like big pockets, pouches, and everything.
And Stan Lee is just like being incredibly passive aggressive with them, which is hilarious.
Yeah. I think even Todd like gags on Rob. He's like, "Hey Rob, people always ask me this about you. Did you really pay for that haircut?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss those kind of like old, weird sort of video features they used to do.
Yeah. Speaking of that, recently I've been watching one that I just found out existed, or I might have forgotten about it and probably watched it a long time ago, but it's called The Gravity Room, and you can find episodes of it on YouTube, but it's like a show that's kind of run by teenagers, and they like interview Rob Liefeld and Todd and everyone of that time.
I've never heard of this.
I just recently found out about it. It's the craziest thing, and like it's one of those shows that kind of hasn't aged well too, because they're like, "Oh, Metal Gear Solid or whatever, like that game sucks. Come and play Ark the Lad or something." And it's like, no, that is the wrong opinion. Don't listen to this man.
Gaming masterpiece Ark the Lad.
Yeah, I think it was Ark the Lad, but it was just like it was a game, some game called Ark something, and then I was just like, man, that's like one of the worst games on PlayStation. Who would listen to this? But yeah, check that out. Check out Anti-Gravity Room. Check out Claremont's Run. I don't know, Tony, do you have anything else to say, maybe?
I don't know. No, I got nothing.
I kind of putting you on the spot, huh? Tell us about your hopes and dreams.
My hopes and dreams. My brand new podcast.
Yeah. Are you really starting a podcast?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe I am now.
The first announcement. So
exclusive world premiere.
Yeah. So follow Tony Stark at. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone for watching. The video is going to speed up here in a second, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the time-lapse video, and I'll just be playing some music. These little monsters in the back, again, part of the comic book. They're not really explained what they are. They're going to look like basically silhouettes of aliens, but they're actually kind of like these cute little... God, they look like... If anyone's ever seen the comic book Bone, they look like that
jellyfish.
Yeah, they kind of do look like jellyfish.
Well, I do love Bone though, so I'm gonna go with that one.
Yeah. So, again, check out the Maxx. My brief little description might have felt like I covered all of it, but it's just my interpretation of the property. It's this whole other it's just crazy, and people call Sam Keith a genius for creating it. I feel that maybe he's not a genius, but he's a great storyteller, so check it out. Thanks, Tony, for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll have to get you back on again sometime, because I do love talking comic books. But everyone have a good night, and, like, share, subscribe, all that crap, and we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.